Let's talk about gargoyles, specifically these kinds, what they symbolize, and why rich people put these stone gremlins in their houses. If you're Indonesian, it's really one of those things that you see every day and don't even notice. Like, I counted these on my morning walk, and guess how many I saw? At least 4 of these buggers. With stats like that, you might think I was living in 14th century Majapahit. Like, here's one on the airport, here's one in school, and here's one on the International Space Station. Unlike their European counterpart, the kind we see in Indonesia were cultural imports from India called Dvarapala that came along with Hindu Buddhism in early 1st century CE. Though the first confirmed Hindu kingdom was later in the 4th century with Kutai, so there's your 500-year ballpark. Now, why has this Hindu Buddhist practice stayed in a now predominantly Muslim country? Isn't Islam generally known to reject pre-Islamic pagan imagery? Like in Egypt, where ancient statues were defaced? Well, simple. Islam in Indonesia spread through cultural adaptation, not conquest. So there were never any strong external political pressures against these native practice. The communities that used them simply continued. And the people who had these traditions were historically dominant cultures, such as Bali and Javanese. But you'll find similar ones across Cambodia, Thailand, India, and even other parts of Indonesia, with each regions having subtle differences. These are guardian figures. They usually come in pairs and often depict giants from Hindu Buddhist mythology. If these guys get to call themselves giants, you can probably get away with a couple of extra inches on your hinge profile. With that said, here's how you can tell which region these gargoyles are from. First, their expression. If they look fierce or smiling, with exaggerated fangs and intense eyes, they're likely Balinese. These are meant to ward off evil. But if they look stoic, rounder features, and little to no fangs, these are Javanese. They're meant to protect you more so than scaring off would-be thieves. Second, look at their posture. If they're standing, they're commonly from Bali or Central Java, and are usually placed at outer gates or less sacred thresholds. If they're kneeling, they're from East Java, as the famous giants of Singhasari are kneeling to represent immovable strength. These are often placed at royal or sacred thresholds. Lastly, and by far the best way to tell these apart, is to have common sense. If you're in Probolinggo, then that kneeling Dwarapala is probably not Cambodian.